Get started. All right, I'm going to read some of these. I'm curious to know where everybody's tuning in from. So we have Crawfordsville, Indiana, Missouri, Eastvale, California, Huntsville, Alabama, Lynchburg, Virginia, Sacramento, California, Ohio, Austin, Georgia, California. Odd Vondenacker is in Holland, Michigan. Gary Grindle in Tucson, Arizona. Frank Ortiz in Texas. We've got a Zoom user in Oklahoma. Pam Luco is in San Diego, Rod in Tucson, Rhonda in Georgia, Utah. All right, this is awesome. We got Montana, Madera, California, Onaway, Michigan. Well, welcome everybody to tonight's call. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're glad that you're here. We're really glad that you're here. My name is Trent, and I'm going to be hosting tonight's call. I'm very excited to be on this call. And this is a call we do every week. This is a call we do every week on metabolic health. And we have amazing experts who are willing to voluntarily give their time and teach about the science behind metabolic health. We have a great guest tonight. We have great guests every week, and we hope that you will make this a regular part of your weekly routine. If you or somebody that you love is struggling with your metabolic health, you're in the right place to learn how to solve these problems naturally. Now, we understand that there's a place for medication. Sometimes medication can be very, very helpful, even life-saving. But our goal is ultimately to help people get off of medications. And I'm going to give you some proof later in this call that I believe we're better at doing that than maybe anybody on the planet. We've got something that's really, really good here and that works fantastically. And I'll give you some proof here in a moment. So there's already over 139 people on the live Zoom call. There will be lots more people that will be watching this through restreams on Facebook or on different apps. So we're glad that you're here. For those of you that are here on the live Zoom, we will have an open Q&A at the end of the call. So you'll be able to raise your hand, ask questions, get answers to those questions, and we're going to have some fun. So, okay, as we get started, I'll just start. Uh-oh, hold on. We've got a hacker. Hold on. Brittany, I think I can see your screen. Okay, Brittany, you were just sharing your screen. Is that right? Okay, I thought we had a hacker. No hacker. Just held my breath. Okay. Okay, so to begin, I will share my screen and here we go. So to begin, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. I don't know most of you, and I'll just tell you a little bit about why we do these calls every week and who I am. So my name is Trent, and I make videos on social media and have quite a large following, teaching people about metabolic health, teaching people about fiber and fasting and how to solve many health problems without any medication, doing it naturally. And this is a picture of me and my dad. So about 7 years ago, my dad died from stage 4 colon cancer. When they found the cancer, it had already spread to his liver, his lungs, it was all over his body. And my dad is like my hero, one of the greatest guys of all time, but he had one of the worst diets of all time. He was an emotional eater, a stress eater, and he was insulin resistant. Now, he didn't know what that meant. He didn't know what that was. Most people, back when my dad got diagnosed, didn't know what the term meant. He was pre-diabetic. He had psoriasis all over his body. He had high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And this is a good picture of my dad. There were times where he really, really struggled with weight control. And so when my dad got sick, I got desperate and I just started to read and study everything I could to try and save, my dying father. And what I learned was truly eye-opening. Once I saw and read what I saw and read, I couldn't unsee it. And I made it my mission to teach other people what I had found. Because maybe you have a dad or a mom or a brother or a loved one that is struggling with their metabolic health. And this message that we're going to share tonight could potentially save a life. So that's what these calls are about. We started doing these calls with just a few of us, and now we have usually over 1,000 people a week that will watch this live call or the recording. And we're just getting started. So that's a little bit about me. Now, I want to start the call by bringing on a guest. This is somebody who I have never met in my life. We had a very brief conversation earlier today, but I'm really, really excited to meet her. So this is Whitney Lind. And Whitney, I understand you've had quite a great experience with this protocol, and we want to hear about it. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself and where things were at with your health prior to starting this protocol.
Yeah, so my name's Whitney, and I'm from just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. So, uh, man, I have dealt with PCOS really since I was a teenager, but not diagnosed till my 20s. But that came with irregular cycles all the time. So, like saying like I would not have a cycle for a year, 2 years at a time. And then all of a sudden, everything would come. And I know there are men here, so I apologize for that, but that's how it was. And so back in January, I was at a pretty low place. I had, over the past year up until that point, spent quite a bit of money on my health. Went and found a health coach and did one-on-one, and that did help some behavioral things. But I was really stuck, and I was having I had come off the birth control pill and was off of it for 2 years and never had a cycle. I've been married for 7 years, and of course, before I got married, conversations with my husband were, infertility is probably going to be an issue. And he has always been super supportive. But 2 years ago, we decided, hey, let's just see what happens. And of course, I didn't cycle. So January came and I started having a cycle, and it never went away. So I had to go to my gynecologist to figure out what was going on. And I was just at a really desperate place, feeling hopeless. Like I'm never going to get out of this. This is just, this is my life. This is what it is. This is genetics, and just feeling stuck. But I stumbled upon a TikTok live and telling about the Feel Great system, and who someone else who had dealt with PCOS and had a lot of success with the system. So I just decided, well, I've come this far. I might as well just put it all in and try it and see what
Wait,
happens.
I want to interrupt you for a moment. We still have
Yeah.
plenty of time, so don't worry about that. But I want to interrupt you and ask a question. And you don't have to go here if it's too personal. Okay. So I want to be clear about that. Um,
Okay.
but when you say you had a cycle that started and wouldn't stop, is that exactly what it sounds like?
Yeah, it was 2 months of bleeding. So just to be frank. So yeah,
2 months of bleeding. So
yeah,
for those that are listening here that are unfamiliar with PCOS, and I am obviously for obvious reasons, I don't know much about this personally, right? But when you have PCOS, you get irregular cycles. And PCOS is the number one contributor to infertility among females. And insulin resistance is the number one contributor to PCOS in females. So it goes, you know, infertile, the cause of the infertility is the PCOS, and the cause of the PCOS is insulin resistance. All right, now
yeah,
continue. So tell us a little bit, Whitney. You said that you were depressed and frustrated and scared. Um,
yeah,
Tell us a little bit about what your experience has been over the last 4 months.
yeah. So I mean, in the process of trying the system, I was going back and forth with my doctor. And she actually recommended from the get-go, hey, why don't we try this GLP-1? And I was really thankful that my insurance didn't cover it. And I told her, hey, it's not going to work out, but I've got something I'm trying. Let me try it. I'll come back and just see what happens. So I came back in like a month. I was seeing her very frequently because of obvious issues. So I came back in a month, and my blood work had drastically changed from January. I mean, it was probably about 2 months, but over a 3 month span, my A1C went from 5.9 to 5.5, and now it's at 5.3. This is since January. My I also had been diagnosed with fatty liver disease at, a couple of years ago. My liver enzymes had been in the 50s, and were now in normal ranges over the span of a few months. My triglycerides were, I think, 150 and were cut to 88, which I'd never, ever experienced in my life. So those were, the numbers. And then even since January, the end of January, actually, I've lost 45 pounds. So that's also huge because, working over a year with a health coach and making changes and not being able to budge the scale was so discouraging. To finally see things move even in that regard was hope filled.
So you're getting a lot of love in the chat. You'll have to check that out here in a minute. I am so proud of you. I mean, what an accomplishment.
Yeah.
How is your cycle? Has that normalized at all yet or not yet?
Well, so not completely yet. In the process, I had to have a DNC procedure. So just to clear things out. And so that recovery has been kind of ongoing. But I went back to my gynecologist last week, and she did some blood work. She did ultrasounds, which we have done 3 sets of ultrasounds, and she said my endometrium is completely normal now, from where it was before. And so she just told me, she's like, we've been on the pill for like 2 months now, just trying to regulate a little bit. But she said, your fasting insulin is now 10, and your other numbers are so remarkable. Whenever you're ready to start the pregnancy process, becoming pregnant, trying again, go for it. So she believes that I will begin cycling once I'm off the pill. So, yeah.
Okay, so you said your fasting insulin is now 10. Where was
Yeah.
your fasting insulin before and where is it now?
Yeah. So in January, it was at 40, and it's been as high as the 60s. So, yeah.
Well, for those that maybe aren't familiar with insulin resistance, maybe this is your first call with us. When your fasting insulin is that high, your body is kind of bathing in insulin. And Lindsay, our expert today, will talk more about the implications of that. But the implication for you, certainly, Whitney, might be that now, Whitney, you and your husband are able to start looking towards pregnancy, which
Yeah.
is so awesome. And we're so happy for you. And you're just so lovely. It looks like you're a musician looking in the background of the room
Yeah.
there, and you're in Nashville. So I want to wish you luck and the best of fortune in your endeavors for a musical career if you're pursuing that. I'm actually going to Nashville for the very first time this weekend to do an event about this. So
Yeah.
really, really happy for you, Whitney. You're amazing. Thanks for coming on our call, and you're welcome back anytime. In fact, we would love an update once you've got like a positive pregnancy test or something like that. That would be amazing. We're all cheering and rooting for you and praying for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I mean, that is really cool. That is why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, down 40 plus pounds, cut her triglycerides in half. Fasting insulin is a fraction of what it once was. HbA1c from pre-diabetes to no more pre-diabetes. I mean, that is what this is about. Now, we want to give you as much value and as much education as possible. Knowledge is power. And once you understand the science behind hormones, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, is a lot on hormones. We're going to be talking about sex hormones. We're going to be talking about menopause. We're going to be talking about PCOS for women, erectile dysfunction for men, insulin, which is a very, very important hormone. And once you understand hormones and how the body uses hormones, there are things that you can do that will literally change your body inside and out. And Whitney is a great example of that. And so today we have an expert on our call that is, and I'm not exaggerating, I say this often, one of the top experts in the world on this subject. This is Lindsay Venn, and Lindsay is one of the founding members of the Metabolic Society for Healthcare Practitioners. Lindsay is an expert who spends day in, day out helping people fix their metabolic health. Many of the people that she works with have PCOS or type 2 diabetes or prediabetes or struggle with weight control or thyroid problems or are going through menopause, etc. Right? And Lindsay coaches them through this and tries to find natural solutions to these big problems. So, Lindsay, we're going to turn the time over to you and take it away.
Do you,
Uh,
am I?
I might have just removed your spotlight though, so let me replace that.
Okay.
Spotlight for everyone. Okay, my bad. There you go, Lindsay.
Awesome. No, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. Let me get my screen shared with everybody so you can see the presentation I have prepared for you today. So, and Whitney, thank you so much for sharing your story, because I get to work with PCOS patients all the time, and they're one of my favorite groups of people because they have such it's on a clock. You have a pressing need in order to make this better, and it's such a huge goal that you're trying to achieve when it comes to getting pregnant. So it's amazing, the power of diet too. So good job on you. And anyway, so we'll get going. So first of all, here's my information. If you want to reach me, you can go to Venn Integrative Medicine or Insulin IQ. I am happy to help. As Trent said, the topic of tonight's show or presentation is hormones, and how insulin resistance plays a role. So there are four major hormones for health that I really like to talk about with people, because these things can all be greatly impacted by lifestyle. And those are the ones to me that are the most important. So insulin, you see there, your thyroid hormones, different sex hormones that we'll talk about, and vitamin D. I did intentionally leave cortisol off this list. Cortisol is the master hormone of all hormones. The problem with cortisol that we have is that it's very difficult to address. We're going to do all the same things that we're going to tell you to do for the others. Sleep well, eat, healthy foods, intermittent fast, exercise, meditate, all of those things. So I don't include that one in here because it's hard to control and extremely important, but not as easy to control as these other ones. And so first, of course, as you all know, to me and to Trent and to everybody else, the most important thing that we need to control is our insulin. For those of you who are new, we'll go through this again real quick on how this works. How does insulin actually work? Well, it works just like a key in a lock. And so when our cell has, in every cell, 100% of the cells in the body require insulin in order to get glucose in. And so as you see over here in this slide, insulin will go into the receptor unlocks the door for glucose to get in through this mechanism at the GLUT4. When you have insulin resistance, it's exactly that. The cell is now resistant to the effects of insulin. It doesn't allow that insulin into the receptor, and therefore glucose cannot get into the cell. The answer to this and the body's response to this is to make more and more and more insulin in order to do what we call ramrodding that glucose into the cell. Well, what's the problem with that? The more insulin we have, the more we go into what we call storage mode. Insulin's job is to store things, to store energy. It doesn't want to burn things. And so as you can see in the picture down here at the bottom, the higher our insulin, the more we're going to do this. And we're actually going to store fat in places where we shouldn't store it. So places like our liver or our muscle, we're doing those kinds of things. If you look at these mechanisms of insulin on the different things, look what we're doing. We're generating hunger. Well, that's so we can store more stuff, right? We are increasing glycogen synthesis. Glycogen is our storage form of glucose. We're increasing the amount of adipose tissue. We're inhibiting the ability to burn fat. Again, everything here is store, 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 store. As we're trying to heal and get better and lose weight, we don't want to be in storage mode. We want to be in burning mode. And so if you want to know where you're at, the labs that I recommend to check are a fasting insulin. Ideal is less than 6. Whitney did an amazing job going from 60 to 10. Kudos, girl, you did great. The other way, most people have a cholesterol panel. If you look at your triglyceride to HDL ratio, meaning divide your triglyceride by your HDL, you want your number to be less than 1.5. If your number is above that, there's a very good chance that you have insulin resistance. So again, what is insulin doing? It is preventing, this guy over here, it is preventing burning. We want to start burning things. That's important. I call it, you know, emptying out the gas tank, getting the sludge off the bottom. You want to be able to do this on a regular basis. So again, it's going to increase the amount of storage into our muscle and our adipose tissue. It's going to increase the glycogen, again, carbohydrate storage. It's going to increase glucose utilization, meaning that, yes, we're using that glucose better. Increase fat synthesis. We're going to inhibit actually burning. So inhibiting glucose production from the liver means we're not burning our glycogen. That's because insulin is high. And then it is important, and this is the one good thing about having insulin, is it is going to stimulate growth of protein. So it does help there, but we want to keep it at a normal level, not at an elevated level. So what do we do? How do I fix my insulin? How do I get insulin resistance reversed? You guys have seen this slide before. If you've watched before, definitely need to do some intermittent fasting, definitely follow a low carb, whole food diet, incorporate the feeling good sleep hygiene. Next is thyroid. And we get this question on these calls all the time. And so I'm really glad that we got to spend a little extra time on it today. Thyroid, you know, this is gland in our neck that produces two different hormones. It produces T4 and T3. The thing that you have to keep in mind here, as you can see here too, it's T3 that is the important one. It's the one that actually binds to receptors and makes things do what they're supposed to do. So T4, numbers are different out there. I've seen anywhere from 80 to 90% of our thyroid produced is T4. Well, fine, hunky-dory. But if T3 is our powerhouse and it's only 10 to 20% of the hormone we're producing, we have problems because this T3 is all things metabolism. If you think about the word metabolism, we're talking about your weight, we're talking about your temperature regulation, we're talking about constipation versus diarrhea type of things, skin and hair integrity, energy levels, all of those things, we want T3 to function well. So here's another problem. Like Whitney had mentioned, her insulin resistance had led to fatty liver. Well, the place we convert T4 to T3, one of the places at least, is in our liver. And if our liver is dysfunctional because of fatty liver, we're not going to be able to do that. And this metabolic powerhouse is now not doing the things that we want it to do. The other things I want to point out here that are really important, and we're going to point out as we go along, signs and symptoms. We've got fatigue, we've got weight gain, like I mentioned too, temperature regulation, we've got constipation, irritability, slow heart rate. These are all things that are hypothyroid, so low levels of thyroid happening in the body. This is most people. I just want you to keep in mind those symptoms because as we move forward with our other hormones, you're going to see a lot of similarities. So here's another one, Hashimoto's. We see a lot of Hashimoto's. You know, probably 50% of my patients with thyroid problems have Hashimoto's. This is an autoimmune disease. This means the body is attacking its own thyroid. This is a problem because then the thyroid can't function normally. This picture over here is an image of what goiter might look like. If we have this problem, this autoimmune effect on the thyroid, we will become hypothyroid. But there's things we can do about it. It is driven by inflammation. So we want to follow a very low inflammatory diet, which includes intermittent fasting, low carb whole foods, things that we talked about before. Insulin resistance, this is kind of a vicious cycle. So if we have an insulin resistant thyroid, then we're going to have problems because the thyroid's already not functioning well. But if we are now metabolically sick because our thyroid's not working, our insulin resistance gets worse. And so it's this vicious cycle of hypothyroid, insulin resistance. How do you make this better? Well, we try to fix both when it comes to it. One of the most powerful things you can actually do for Hashimoto's is to avoid gluten. So there is a very, very, very strong correlation between gluten and autoimmune thyroid. Next is Graves', and this is one I just wanted to include. Graves' disease is also an autoimmune disease of the thyroid, but it creates hyperthyroidism. And so you'll see the symptoms here are completely the opposite of hypo. So people are going to have weight loss, they're going to have nervousness, they're going to have things like diarrhea, heart palpitations, etc. The problem with Graves' disease is we have to treat it. It can cause significant problems. So we treat it in a variety of different ways, but the goal of the treatment is to give you hypothyroidism, sadly. So if we end up giving you hypothyroidism, depending on the modality of treatment, you end up with all the same problems. Again, worsening insulin resistance, worsening your metabolism in a variety of ways. So what can you do? Again, insulin smart eating is huge. If your thyroid is insulin resistant, you can make it better by improving the insulin severity or insulin sensitivity. Supplements that you can take, iodine is extremely important. We're actually seeing goiter happen now more frequently because of all the fancy salts. You know, your sea salts, your kosher salts, your Himalayan salts don't have iodine in them. And so we do have dysfunction of the thyroid gland. So make sure you're either using iodized salts or incorporating an iodine supplement. Selenium, my favorite way of giving people selenium is a Brazil nut. If you eat one Brazil nut a day, you get your selenium dosing. And always, if you can get your supplements from food, that's ideal. And then adding in both vitamin A and vitamin D are extremely important for thyroid function. Follow an anti-inflammatory diet. Some people, especially Hashimoto's patients, if they've had enough damage done to their thyroid, will need thyroid replacement. I prefer to have people use the natural ones, the bioidentical, which would be things like NP thyroid or Armour thyroid, if they have to have replacement, because it is 80% T4, 20% T3 versus the synthetics like Synthroid and levothyroxine, which are only T4. And again, if you don't convert, you're not going to get that metabolic benefit out of T3. If you want to look at your labs, these are optimal levels. They're not normal levels. I always tell my patients you want to be optimal. So a TSH, most doctors only order a TSH with what we call reflex. So TSH with reflex, if your TSH is normal, that's all you get. If it's abnormal, they'll then order a T4. They never order a T3. Again, T3 is your metabolic powerhouse. Make sure you request a T3 from your doc if you're getting labs done. So next, let's talk about sex hormones. And so this is more towards what Whitney was talking about as well. So the sex hormones we're going to talk about today, estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. These things are found in both men and women, obviously to varying extents, but we'll talk about the importance of each. So low testosterone men, we're going to see again these similar symptoms. We're going to have constant fatigue. We're going to have increased size of breast tissue actually, but that also includes increased adipose tissue, potential for heart disease, erectile dysfunction, low libido, inability to maintain or improve muscle mass. For our menopausal women, we have all of these other symptoms as well. Again, notice that you're going to have mood issues, you're going to have fatigue, weight gain, all the symptoms again related to hormones that we talked about before. And with progesterone, we've got the weight gain, the mood changes, the low libido, etc. So they're all really interrelated. And so we're talking about that. So first with testosterone, we know that testosterone is inversely related to insulin. Higher the insulin, the lower the testosterone, vice versa. The lower the insulin, the higher your testosterone will get, which is great. The other problems that we have, and we want to understand, is what is the cause of this? We do know insulin resistance leads, just like I said, because of this inverse relationship, it leads to low testosterone. The other problem is insulin resistance actually leads to estrogen production. When men start producing more estrogen than they should, they have problems again with testosterone. They don't have as much muscle mass. They don't have as much insulin sensitivity, etc. So we want to work on improving that muscle mass. Another issue we have are toxins. You know, if we're eating a lot of processed food and a lot of foods that have had hormones injected into them, we're going to have toxin issues. And this too has been known to lead to low testosterone. So trying to eat foods that are natural, whole foods, very, very important. Again, this is important in both men and women. Low testosterone in women is so common, leading primarily to things like fatigue and brain fog. So improving that level is really important. Menopause, I really like this slide. I found it. I thought it was quite funny. Again, we got the weight gain, we've got brain fog, we've got fatigue, we've got mood alterations, etc., that all occur. As we talk about PCOS and weight gain and menopause and weight gain, women get their weight gain right around the midsection when they have issues with low estrogen. PCOS is a low estrogen problem. Menopause is a low estrogen problem. When our estrogen is low, we of course are going to store fat if we are insulin resistant, but the lack of estrogen is going to dictate where that body fat goes, and that's where it goes around the midsection. So improving estrogen, and depending on where your situation is, will help reduce that central adiposity. So again, PCOS, again, the central adiposity, weight gain around the midsection. We also see things like facial hair, again, weight gain, infertility, which is huge, things like acne and irregular periods. Whitney's a great example. Most people, when they think of irregular periods with PCOS, they think of missing periods or periods that only ever happen, every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever. It can also very much have what we call menorrhagia, which is very, very heavy periods as a result of PCOS. And so again, with PCOS, women are not, because insulin shuts off this thing called aromatase, these women are keeping their androgens, their testosterone and DHEA and such, and they're not able to convert them to estrogen. They don't get that increase in luteinizing hormone, which is what causes ovulation. And that increase in luteinizing hormone comes from an increase in estrogen. So if we don't make estrogen, you can't do this. So again, getting estrogen up in these women is extremely important for improving their symptoms. So again, what do? We're same old thing. That's what I love about this, because we're treating multiple things with the same interventions. So low carb, time restricted eating, feel great. We're doing some of this other stuff. Supplements can be quite helpful. And then in our menopausal women, I honestly do recommend hormone replacement. If you want to avoid all things aging and your ovaries are dead, then ideally we want to put you on some kind of bioidentical estrogen to help with all the things that we mentioned before. So the last hormone is vitamin D. Yes, vitamin D is a vitamin, but in the body, it functions like a hormone. And so you can see all the different things here. Again, we've got insulin is one of the things that vitamin D helps with. Bone issues when it comes to calcium absorption, et cetera, developing muscle and strength. The immune system is huge. The one thing that wasn't on here that I really wish would have been listed, because it's extremely common, is fatigue. Low vitamin D will 100% cause fatigue in my patients. And so we always want to check these levels. And so in order to improve all of these things, again, energy, hormone balance, muscle, bone, immunity, et cetera, we want to maximize our vitamin D levels. Here in the United States, you have to take a supplement. If you lay it outside 24/7, 365, you will not get enough vitamin D. So you do want to make sure to be supplementing this. If it is sunny and you can get outside, sunscreen does prevent absorption of what we need to make vitamin D. So you want to get sunlight exposure without sunscreen, and then eat vitamin D rich foods, a lot of animal products, dairy products, etc. So when it comes to this is off my website, and I'm really fortunate to have the last name Venn, because I use this Venn diagram to describe what it is I do. It's putting it all together. If you can make your metabolic health, your mind, body, and metabolic health work by focusing on things like hormones and nutrition and insulin levels, you're going to be able to optimize yourself. And that's what we're focusing on. And that's where all of these different hormones come into play. Again, here is my information. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me either at Insulin IQ or Venn Integrative Medicine. Insulin IQ is offering a 10-day free trial right now. So if you're interested, go to that website.
Okay, thank you so much, Lindsay. I just learned a ton. I mean, I had heard of Graves' disease, but I couldn't explain it if a gun was put to my head, right? And that was really, really good on a lot of different things. And we want to bring Lindsay back here in just a moment for the Q&A. And so there is a Q&A feature now on the Zoom. So if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in the Q&A. We'll answer some of those. We'll also bring some people on live, and you'll be able to raise your hand and come onto the call. I want to say something really fast before I kind of talk about this protocol that can help lower insulin intentionally and help reverse insulin resistance. Something I just did caused fireworks. Zoom is looking at my hand signals. I've noticed if I do a thumbs up, it does a thumbs up on my screen. I don't know how that happened, but that was cool. But I wanted to say something. It is so cool to have Lindsay Venn be willing to come on my and our, call here and teach like that. We've also had Dr. Meegan Brown. We've had Dr. Eric Aiken. I saw Dr. Tiffany Hendricks in the comments asking for these. These are some really, really special people who have obviously given their lives to metabolic health and to helping people who are sick. And you see what's happening? There's a movement, and this is the beginning of a tidal wave. The wave is away from medication. People don't want more medication. They want to not need medication anymore. They want to address the root cause of the problem. Now, medication can be helpful. In fact, medication can be life-saving, but you can't medicate away a lifestyle disease, right? You just end up needing higher and higher doses of medication and then additional medications for the side effects. And what we are doing with this protocol is so awesome and so simple. And for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, I want to explain the protocol. So I'm going to explain that, and then we're going to get to the live Q&A here. I'm going to assume that many of you are here for the first time because there's 300 people on this call just in the live Zoom, and there's going to be hundreds more that will see this for the very first time. So we have a very simple protocol that is natural, safe, and works guaranteed, that is different than anything I've ever tried before. I started using this protocol and it changed my life. I started talking about it, and I had thousands, hundreds of thousands of actually people from all over the world that would learn about this protocol, and now thousands that have tried it and it's changed their lives. So what Lindsay was talking about, and I am not a doctor or an expert. Hold on, I got somebody marking up the screen here. I'm not a doctor or an expert. And so I do not speak, at the level that Lindsay does. Let's just make sure we get that out of the way right up front. And so I'm going to explain it in the terms where I understand it. And really, insulin resistance is what's wrong. Not just with people that have diabetes or obesity problems, but insulin resistance might be what's wrong with like 80% or 90% of metabolic health problems. And that's what Lindsay was saying, right? So you see these problems all over the place. She talked about the skin tags and the darker patches of skin and the constant hunger and the cravings and migraines and fatigue she talked about there. We know about belly fat, which is characterized by this visceral fat, which is the fat that surrounds our liver and our organs, right? But at the heart of it all is this bugger, insulin resistance. It contributes to Whitney Lynn's PCOS. It contributes to erectile dysfunction. I mean, we have teenage and 20-year-old men that have the testosterone levels of 80-year-olds, right? What is going on? It's this. And we know that most of American adults now are either insulin resistant now, pre-diabetic, or they're headed there. And so what we want to do is we want to address the root cause, the insulin resistance, right? Now, why are we all having these problems, right? When one kid's failing the class, maybe it's an individual problem. But when we're all failing the class, there's got to be something bigger going on. There's got to be more of a systemic problem. So everybody in the world knows about white rice. What most people don't consider is that wild rice actually looks like that over there. Around every grain of rice is something called the bran. Now that's the fiber, but food makers, they remove the bran, and we only eat the white part, right? Food makers take something like wheat and they remove all of the fiber, and so that they can make processed foods like white bread. Any product in the store, which is 80% of the store, is in a bag or a box or a container. That has all been processed, and the fiber has largely been removed. When somebody says processed food, what they're actually saying is fiber stripped food. The process of processing food is the process of removing the fiber from the food, okay? Every sugar, every carbohydrate, every natural occurring carbohydrate in nature comes packaged in fiber, okay? So this apple has some sugar in it, and it's got a lot of water in it, and that has been packaged in fiber. And this fiber is really important. When you remove the fiber, you're just basically left with some sugar water here, right? Our modern diet, the modern American, North American, and now global diet is a bunch of food that has pretty much been turned into sugar water because the fiber's been removed. Even sugar itself in nature comes packaged in fiber. Now, we know, in fact, the government knows, doctors know, well, most doctors know, everybody knows that this fiber is actually really important. Let me just read from the CDC's very own website. If you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, fiber's your friend because it's what helps with blood sugar control and weight management. Fiber also lowers your risk of heart disease and cancer. Well, fiber sounds pretty amazing, right? In fact, the number one killer in the world is heart disease, and the number two killer in the world is cancer. And fiber lowers the risk of both dramatically, but fiber is what's being removed. What's going on here? Fiber is specifically what controls our blood sugar and our insulin levels. It keeps insulin in check. Fiber is what protects our heart. Fiber prevents your body from taking in some fat and cholesterol, lowering triglyceride and cholesterol levels. What did Whitney Lynn say? She said she went in, her triglycerides were 150. A month later, they were 88. Never seen a number that low. Maybe fiber's important. Fiber's what maintains your digestive health. We talked about gut health and how to fix the human gut a couple weeks ago. Fiber's the key to that. And fiber is what keeps you feeling full and helps with weight management. Ha! This is a smoking gun. Why would food makers want to take fiber out of food when it's so fantastic for us? Well, one of the reasons is because when you remove fiber from food, you remove the satiety from food. Pretty good if your goal is to sell as much food as possible to make the food not fill you up. Convenient to remove the fiber, right? When you remove fiber from the food supply, on a population basis, you will get a population full of this. This is where we are today. 1 out of 5 American adults have irritable bowel syndrome, and most of those have mental health problems like anxiety and depression. 2/3 of American adults are overweight. 1/3 is pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, and heart disease is the number one killer. Okay. So part of the problem are these processed foods and not getting enough fiber. 50 years ago, we didn't have any of these problems. And 50 years ago, we were eating mostly whole foods, right? So one of the things that we want to do is we actually want to work with more fiber. And Lindsay talked about supplementation. Did you know, actually, I know that you didn't know because nobody heard about this study. I mean, this should have been headline news, but nobody heard about it. Did you know that there was a science company in North America, formerly known as Rexall Drugs? Do you guys remember the old Rexall drugstores, the old Rexall pharmacies? Rexall came out with a blend of plant fiber that they said would change the world. Now, it didn't have any drugs in it. It was just fiber from plants. And they did a study on what happens when you have this before or with your meals. And sure enough, when you have this blend of fiber before your meals, your blood sugar doesn't spike, your insulin doesn't spike, and it's like you're unprocessing the processed food, right? Well, you'd think that that would be headline news because, I mean, in this country alone, we have 100 million American adults that are either type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic, millions of whom are on insulin. And after dinner tonight, they're going to go into a corner and jab themselves with an insulin pen just so they can have some semblance of a normal life and not have their feet cut off, right? But what this study proved was that if you get the right fibers with your meal, you might never need insulin again. Nobody heard about this study. Nobody. Should have been headline news. Now, in addition to fiber, and I'll skip through some of this, in addition to fiber, we also know that fasting is incredible. Jason Fung, is a guy that got a lot of flack because he said he was going to teach people how to prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes. And you can't say that or couldn't say that just a decade ago in the medical community. They said, no, type 2 diabetes is irreversible. It's a chronic disease. People will have it forever. And Fung said, baloney. And he said, I can help people reverse their type 2 diabetes, no problem. And people said, no, you can't. And he said, yes, I can. And yet in Fung's clinic at the University of Toronto, most of the patients have a complete reversal of the disease. Most of the patients with type 2 diabetes have a complete reversal of the disease and are off all their medications in 3 to 6 months. How did he do it? He did it with fasting. And what we're doing on this protocol, now that I've kind of set the table, is we are combining fiber supplementation with intermittent fasting. People struggle to get a lot of fiber in their diet. I've been trying to eat more veggies my whole life, and it hasn't happened yet. I do good from time to time, but then I fall off the wagon, right? And I've also tried to fast. It's hard. I like to snack. And I do really good when I start a new diet and I say I'm going to do some intermittent fasting. I do really good on Monday and Tuesday. And by the weekend, I've fallen off the wagon and say, all right, Monday, I'm starting fresh again. I've been starting fresh again for, decades until the last couple of years. And now I have been able to maintain pretty effortlessly my results, and this works fantastically. So this is how the protocol works. When we talk about this fiber and fasting protocol, this is what we're doing. If this is breakfast and this is lunch and this is dinner, most of us are skipping one meal a day. Now, you can modify this. You don't have to fast, but trust me, unless you've got a really special circumstance, you want to be fasting. So let's say we skip breakfast, and that's the easiest one to skip, and we can extend our overnight fast. Well, when we extend the overnight fast, we're keeping our insulin levels low. We're forcing insulin to be low. This helps our body become less insulin resistant. We become the opposite, actually. We become more insulin sensitive. Now, people will say, well, geez, I'm skipping breakfast. I mean, I'm going to be starving. This can't be good advice. When we're fasting, we're actually not starving. We're not. We're just switching fuel sources. Instead of burning food for fuel, we start burning body fat for fuel. We're getting calories, but we're getting those calories from fat, right? And our bodies feel great. They become more insulin sensitive. Our numbers start to look better. We're burning fat. We're literally eating our love handles for breakfast, right? Now, if that sounds difficult, because we like maybe you like your morning coffee or your morning bagel and cream cheese or your Starbucks or whatever, right? There's a way to make this really easy with supplementation. And so when you skip breakfast, take the $5 you were going to spend at Starbucks, and instead you can use that $5 to buy some things that, instead of contributing to the problem, are going to help you fix the problem at its root cause. So the Unimate is used to make fasting easy. I've got some right here. I sip it every 10 minutes or so. And when I'm sipping the Unimate, it makes me completely forget about food. I mean, I can fast forever. This naturally increases GLP-1 by 60 to 70% with no drugs and no side effects. It's my favorite thing on earth. Okay. I mean, apart from my family and all my relationships, right? But I mean, in terms of a supplement, it's the coolest thing I've ever tried. I love it. So you sip this as often as you need to. Sometimes people will have two early in the day. Sometimes people will have one in the day, or one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Whenever you sabotage yourself with snacking, crack a Unimate instead. Okay. This is like willpower in a packet. This is like the natural Ozempic. Okay. It does the same thing with no side effects. Now, before our heaviest meal each day, it is very important to package that meal in fiber. Okay. It will help lower blood sugar. It will help with satiety. It'll help us fill us up and help us avoid overeating. It works fantastically. It will lower triglycerides. It will improve HDL. I mean, all of this is not just Trent saying this. Both of these are in the physician's desk reference. Any doctor can look them up. You can look at the research. There's more than a dozen clinical studies. In fact, the manufacturer that makes the stuff gives a full 90-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. You can order an A1C test from the manufacturer and prove it with a blood test that you do with your doctor or at home. Okay. So, and it's kind of cool because it's cost neutral. You're just taking the $5 you saved, skipping a meal, and it pays for itself. Now, I went on this protocol. It completely changed my life. I started talking about it and started to get friends, strangers, people from all over the world that have said that this has completely changed their life, and they've sent me messages. Some of these people had type 2 diabetes for over 23 years and are off all medications, don't have any diabetes, right? This is her before, lost 125 pounds. Her A1C was in the 14s. Now her A1C is like a 4.7. No meds. I have hundreds and hundreds of these, but I told you I was going to give you some proof. This actually isn't the proof I was talking about. So before we do the Q&A, if you do me a favor, all right, many of you on this call have been on the protocol. Some of you for a week, some of you for a month. Maybe you're new on this. Some of you for a year. Do me a little favor. For all the people that are watching that have not started, If you have noticed a measurable positive impact on your health, measurable is important. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing a sentence or two in the chat, I'd really appreciate it. I don't want you to exaggerate. Okay. If you or somebody in your home has experienced a measurable positive improvement, please, I'll read a few of these before we open the Q&A. Now, some people are sending me direct messages asking how to order this. Whoever invited you to the call can give you a direct link to order direct from the manufacturer. If you try to order online, it is pricey. You're going to pay through the nose for it. But if you can get a link direct to the manufacturer from whoever invited you, it's the same link I use every month to order it. It will give you lifetime discount pricing. It saves you about $50. And that discount is for life. So you get the lowest price and you order it direct and you're not paying a markup from a retailer or whatever, right? So that is a code that we can give you for coming to this call. Now, I'm going to read some of these. Zoom user says my A1C went from a 9.6 to a 6.9. Carol Sharing says 3 months, my low blood pressure, normal poo, and lost 2 inches on the waist. Great. Tristan Bragg says I've lost 30 points. I've lost 30 pounds, down 6 points on my A1C. Hold on. These are moving faster than I can read them. So let me start over. Jason Mallon says almost 60 days on the program. I'm doing 1 meal a day, lost weight, feel great. Fran Ward says I've reduced my A1C from a 10 to a 5.7. Okay. That is from type 2 diabetes to no more type 2 diabetes. Mary, I was invited by a TikTok account called Restore Digestion. I believe that's the great pharmacist Amanda Yu. So reach out to Amanda Yu. Tommy Curtin says, I've been on it for 2 weeks. My energy level is amazing and my mood is much better. I love that, Tommy. Kim Harmon, reversed pre-diabetes in 6 months, lost 41 pounds, no more inflammation, and also off my acid reflux medications. Mijin Brown, reversed my pre-diabetes, lost 20 pounds, improved brain fog, not brain frog, energy and mood. My triglycerides to HDL is a 0.54. That's killer. John Patterson, my LDL went from 397 to 83. My triglycerides went from 498 to 80. My A1C went from a 6.2 to a 5. My neuropathy is gone. My acid reflux is gone. I've lost 52 pounds. Jason says down 20 pounds in 10 weeks. Christy Henderson, my IBS symptoms reversed overnight. Rosacea better. Okay, there are lots and lots more of these messages. I don't have time to read them all because we want to get to the Q&A, but we're changing the world. We are changing the world with this protocol. There's nothing magic about it. It's just science. We're going to lean into the science and let the science do its thing. When we started eating and snacking too often on processed foods, we started to get sick. Bring back the fiber, do some fasting, get unsick. Okay. All right. We're going to bring Lindsay back and we're going to open up. We've got a few questions in the Q&A, which I don't see anymore.
I answered them, but we can certainly talk about them if you want.
You answered them. Okay. If you would like to answer your question live on the call, we need to keep the questions brief. Please understand that we're not your doctor. I'm not even a doctor. And some of these questions might be better for Lindsay offline. But if you'd like to ask a question and raise your hand, you can raise your hand in the chat. Or we can read some of these from the Q&A if nobody would like to come on the line.
Well, kind of to address a lot of those, there were several things that were about, I want to come off my levothyroxine, or I don't have a thyroid. Do I need to be on this for life? So first of all, if you don't have a thyroid, you have to be on a thyroid replacement or it will be lethal. You will die from not having thyroid hormones. If you have a thyroid that is dysfunctional from insulin resistance, yes, you can improve that and potentially come off of your thyroid medication, but you need to improve the insulin resistance before trying to come off of the thyroid medication. It's a stepwise kind of thing. And then lastly, you know, as we age, I'm menopausal. At least 50% of menopausal women have an poorly functioning thyroid. I'm completely insulin sensitive and my thyroid still can't keep up. I need and want the metabolic benefits of thyroid replacement. So I personally take a thyroid medication myself. And so the goal isn't always to come off of every single thing that you're ever on. The goal is to be as metabolically healthy as you can be And in certain instances, thyroid replacement is really important.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to handle 2 of these questions. Rhonda Green says, how does this help with blood pressure? So if you look up the Unimate, one of the key ingredients in Unimate is something called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is like the nectar of the gods. Okay, it is unbelievable stuff. And chlorogenic acid is fantastic. Just Google chlorogenic acid for normalizing or lowering blood pressure. Chlorogenic acid is one of the best ways to naturally improve and lower blood pressure. And so by sipping on the Unimate once, twice, sometimes I'll even do 3 in a day, it helps regulate blood pressure. Deborah Stapley also asked a question. I have a question. I don't need to lose weight, but I'd like to bring my cholesterol down and get out of pre-diabetes range. Do I need to eat special food or can I eat what I normally eat? Now, I'm not a nutritionist. Maybe Lindsay should be the one answering this, but I can tell you this, the balance, this blend of soluble fiber is the only natural, clinically proven, and natural alternatives to statin medications that I'm aware of in the physician's desk reference. This often works better than statin drugs at lowering LDL cholesterol. It doesn't lower HDL, and it works fantastically. And the manufacturer will guarantee that. So if you just eat what you're eating now, because you said you don't need to lose any weight, but you start the protocol, I would expect that both the prediabetes numbers and the cholesterol normalize. And so that would be my response. Okay, go ahead. There's another question, Lindsay, that was better for you. Let me find it again. Jimmy said, I don't have a thyroid and I've had the most amazing results from this protocol. Guys, you should follow Jimmy on TikTok. I mean, Jimmy's cataloged his journey. He looks like a different guy. And if I may say so, Jimmy, you look like a happier guy. I mean, I look at you and you're just glowing, man. I love it. So let's see here. Tried to
There's
transition.
something about, oh, sorry, transitioning to the Feel Great from something like Mounjaro. This will absolutely help you come off the Mounjaro, but you definitely want to taper off because cold turkey stopping those meds is very difficult. So taper down while incorporating Feel Great.
Yep. Okay. There was a bunch of questions in the Q&A, and there was one that I wanted to address. Somebody said that they were on the protocol and that their blood sugar was coming down, but that they were experiencing diarrhea. Now, I want to be very clear about this. When you start adding, especially, when we've been fiber deprived, when you start adding more fiber into your diet abruptly, that can cause a variety of things short term: bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea. It's really important, whether constipated or diarrhea, to drink lots of water. If you have diarrhea and you don't get enough water, you'll get dehydrated. And water can help with the constipation. If you're feeling any adjustment period to the fiber, I've got news for you. That means you've got some dysbiosis, which means you've got a damaged gut. The only way to fix it is with fiber, but you may need to start slowly and gradually scale up. Maybe start with half a packet and then gradually scale up. But that does happen from time to time. It's pretty rare, but it's just like fiber. I mean, some people, if they go eat, a bowl of cherries, it wrecks them, right? Okay.
So there's one about Trina asked, I'm on Trulicity and have been for a year. Is it okay to start to feel good system? This is a GLP-1. Absolutely. Again, this is a great way to come off of Trulicity, taper down, go slow, but get on Feel Great first.
Awesome. Well, hey, this is really cool. We are just about out of time. And since we don't have, this is the first time in history that we have not had somebody raise their hand and come onto the call, which is kind of sad, but maybe next time, right? Thank you to probably about 50 of you that have your cameras on. It is really cool to see some faces. And for sure, you all have people in your life that are struggling with their metabolic health. Maybe you're struggling, maybe your loved ones are struggling. If somebody you love is struggling with their metabolic health, we do this call every week. We don't charge for it. We have some of the best experts in the world that are voluntarily coming onto the call and teaching what nobody else is talking about. This works. And if you use it and use it properly and are consistent, it will work for you. Now, it's not magic. One of the things I don't like about this is the wrong way to say it. Sometimes when people talk about how they lost 20 pounds in their first 2 days, or 2 weeks or whatever, or first 30 days, people like me might feel discouraged because I didn't lose a pound for 5 weeks. I felt better, but I wasn't noticing anything on the scale. Everybody's different. Use it properly, be consistent. It won't let you down. And if you feel like something's not right, come to the call, ask questions. We want to coach you. We want to help you with this, right? Lindsay, thank you. Lindsay, once again, put in the chat if somebody isn't working with a doctor, if they need hormone testing or blood work, or they don't know how to interpret their blood work, or they want a second opinion, if you wouldn't mind letting people know how they can reach out to you. We do this call every week, same link, same time, Wednesday at 8 p.m. And we hope you'll be back next time. And if somebody you love is struggling, you can invite them too. They'll thank you later. All right, everybody. Love you. Thanks for being so concerned about metabolic health. We'll see you next week.